This is SE Featured. This is the power of sports.
In the 1990s, the city of Chicago was home to the exploits of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, who from 1990 to 1998 captured 6 NBA crowns.
The Chicago Bulls have their 6th NBA title.
Into that whirl stepped a 7-foot 2-inch center from Perth named LUC Longley, the first Australian to play in the NBA. Longley had been a first-round pick in the 1991 NBA draft.
The Minnesota Timberwolves select LUC Longley from the University of New Mexico.
After 3 seasons in Minnesota, Longley was traded to the Bulls in 1994, who were without Michael Jordan, who had retired from basketball a year earlier after winning 3 consecutive titles.
I'm saying right now I don't have the mental drive to come out and push myself to play for a certain focus.
Even without Jordan, the Bulls still had Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson. For Longley, the move to Chicago would change his life in ways he could not have imagined.
It was like a breath of fresh air or a fish back into water. It was back to being basketball that involved spacing and movement and sharing the ball and timing and playing basketball. The experience I had when I first got into the league, and what happens with teams that aren't very good in the NBA is they end up playing isolation, one-on-one bully ball, which is, or hero ball, some people want to call it, which is not fun to play if you're not the hero, you know. So you tend to be not involved. You know, I was finding my feet in the league, learning how everyone played. David Robinson gave me 50 my rookie year, and not a single guy on the team said, oh, you might want to force him this way. You know, there was none of that. So I get to Chicago, and it's exactly the opposite. Everybody's vocal, everyone's supportive of everybody else. The practices are longer and harder. It was really like stepping into a different league. And then really there also the leadership. Phil had a very, very different command of a group of young men's minds to what anything else I'd ever experienced before, and I immediately felt accepted. And it pumped up my tyres, it got me rolling, it got me feeling confident. When you're confident, you play better. When you play better, you're more confident, and off it goes. It's a spiral. Really, I got to Chicago and my spiral started to spin the right way.
On March 19, 1995, Michael Jordan announced his return to the Bulls, and with that began a mission to capture a 4th championship.
Being away from the game, I easily created that hunger to come back and be successful as a team, and certainly have some challenges individually. I think that's one of the reasons that I left the game. I really didn't have the same type of challenges.
There was teething problems while MJ worked his way back in the game, and we figured out how to help him and be out of his way and be in his way. You know, we figured out how to play with him. I figured out how to set screens on him. So there was a lot of, the belief obviously went through the roof. Suddenly you got the best player, arguably the best player in the game at that time, and that has an exponential effect on everyone else. You know, it makes everyone better. MJ let you figure things out on the floor. He wasn't a guy who was going to sit you down and ask for specific things. He led by example. And it may be folklore that he worked hard on his game in that off-season, but I'd be very surprised if there was any off-season when he didn't do that. The guy had an appetite for work and an appetite for competition that made him what he was. You know, that wasn't an accident.
For the 1995-96 season, no one doubted the Bulls were talented, but it remained to be seen how the pieces would fit together, especially with the addition of Dennis Rodman.
Well, obviously we started not knowing who we were. We didn't have a personality per se, other than obviously Michael was a big personality, but we didn't know what Dennis was really going to bring. Some of the roles are still being defined. But again, it happens on the court. You develop connections with people on the court. You develop an understanding of how guys play and how guys move and where. And Phil did a good job of getting us to think outside of that space with some of his philosophical discussions and just his general energy around everybody. But I think everybody, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think everybody felt included and appreciated, and I think that goes a long way to making a team. Teams don't all have to be best mates, or they don't all have to get along or even like each other, but as long as it's an on-court respect, and I suppose you call it professional respect, I think that's where we started. I managed to get along with everybody. Dennis, I was very fond of Dennis. You know, I thought Dennis was a just an impeccable teammate in a lot of ways. I mean, some of his off-court behaviour was amusing, but his on-court behaviour was, his on-court endeavour, I suppose, was something to emulate and something to aspire to, and to play alongside that was uplifting for sure.
The Bulls tore through the regular season in historic fashion, finishing 72-10, while in the playoffs defeated Miami, New York, and Orlando before facing Seattle in the finals. Game 1 was at the United Center in Chicago, and the atmosphere was electric before the opening tip.
Would have had sweaty palms, I would have been fidgety, I would have been running through, trying to block out the crowd and the energy while absorbing it, but trying to focus on our screen and roll coverages, what we were doing as a team, and that was your focus point. You had to be focused in on that, and that was a way of managing all the other distractions. And it had been a distracting week. We'd had incredible media scrutiny, a lot of expectation. We'd been 72-10. Seattle presented a challenge for us, and matchups were difficult. I was having to guard Sean Kemp. I was never designed to guard Sean Kemp. When the basketball engineers designed me, it wasn't around just guarding Sean Kemp, so that was tough. And I thought I did a pretty good job of that, but didn't know. So pre-game, obviously, all that stuff's running through your mind, and thinking about player tendencies and what are we doing in that situation. So yeah, very focused, and also just very present.
The Bulls won the first 2 games at home and captured Game 5 in Seattle to take a 3-2 lead in the best-of-7 series. Game 6 was back in Chicago, and led by Michael Jordan's 22 points, the Bulls were back as NBA champions.
I just remember the final 2 or 3 minutes. I think we had a decent lead and knew that we were going to win. The game was beyond salvageable for Seattle, and I was on the bench at that stage. And looking around and just watching the crowd lift up. That was, first of anything is great, right? And so that was my first championship. And it was, I keep using the same words, but it was uplifting. It was strong. It was, you look down the bench and see your teammates and the guys out there that you did the whole, spent the whole year with trying to get there. And there's a certain amount of relief too, arriving at the summit of any mountain that you climb. And so there was that as well. After we won, I found it a really, after the initial, oh wow, we're here, I wanted to be in the locker room, and I wanted back to quiet. I wanted to be in my own space and just dwell on it for a moment. So the madness and the celebration and that, I suppose, surprisingly, I wasn't that involved in that. I was in my own, I was just, I suppose I felt a lot of things. I felt proud. I wanted to be with my family. I felt proud that I was the first Australian to do it, and I thought, Australia's going to be excited. This is cool for Australia. I held the trophy, but that was fleeting. That was momentary compared to, I guess I just had an overwhelming sense of pride, and I'd like to think I've never had a huge ego, but at that moment I felt pretty good about myself. I was top of the world for a moment.
The title was emotional for Jordan as well. He dedicated the season to the memory of his father, which helped fuel his unmatched desire to compete and win.
He's such a strong personality, such a force of nature. He loads himself up, and all of us up, with so much intensity through practice, through the year, through every game. And that's the amazing thing about Michael, is he never has a day or a moment off. He was just incredible with his focus. It was immaculate. And to get there, to arrive and to win, and to see Michael, also a lot of relief on Michael. He had carried that load of that team to a certain extent through the whole course of the year. So it was nice to be around him, having all that having subsided, and now he's just in the moment too and digging it. And I think he was quieter than you might expect as well. It's just a sobering moment.
If the Lakers of the 1980s were Showtime, in the 90s, the Bulls were the team everyone wanted to see. On any given night, the fans were treated to magical performances, and it all began with their infamous pre-game introductions.
The man in the middle, LONGLEY.
That was a powerful feeling, and I still get goosebumps thinking about that. That was, I suppose, while I said I didn't have a strategy to get to the NBA, I certainly worked hard to get there. And there are moments in your career where you realise, okay, I'm here now, and like I'm right here, I'm in it. And those Bulls introductions, and in particular the energy from the crowd around the playoffs and the focus of your teammates and that whole display pre-game, there's no way you can't be present in that moment. And that was really powerful for me. It certainly got my little glands pumping away.
Chicago entered the 96-97 season featuring the same core of players that had made history the year before. Once again, they found themselves in the NBA Finals, this time facing the Utah Jazz and the Hall of Fame combination of John Stockton and Karl Malone. In a memorable series, the Bulls prevailed in 6 games.
That Stockton-Malone combination and all the great pieces they had around that were a real challenge for us. And we probably didn't have as much momentum and crazy sort of self-belief that year as we did the first year, which was just a sort of an anomaly, really. I was probably not as excited as the first one, but probably more proud again that we'd done it again, and personally started to feel like I really belonged. Whereas the first one felt like maybe I was, lucky to be there. By the second championship, I felt like I belonged. We didn't have as good a series. Karl Malone was my head-to-head matchup, and Phil put Dennis on Ostertag, which wouldn't have been my preferred matchup. So that was even more challenging than Sean Kemp, and a lot of that offense ran through Karl, and that was heavy work.
The finals that year were a showcase for Michael Jordan. In Game 1, it was a shot at the buzzer for a dramatic win. For Game 5, Jordan, suffering from flu-like symptoms, delivered a performance few will forget, scoring 38 points, including the game-winning three-pointer in the final moments.
We all knew that it was a big game for us all to step up and fill Michael's shoes. As it turned out, this may have been his best game of the lot. To watch him on the sideline, and even before the game, he was just listless, could hardly sit up. I've never seen him look like that, ever. The fact that he went out and was able to muster up the kind of performance that he did speaks volumes for him. And you can't say any more about a guy than that.
In Game 6, it was this pass to Steve Kerr to decide the series.
Kerr from 18 feet. Steve Kerr's money.
And one more chapter to the Jordan legacy. More importantly, it was an example of how a group came together to win.
When you're in the picture, you're not watching MJ play, you're watching everyone play, you're listening to Phil, you're focused on your role. It wasn't until after the games, or when you hear about, Mike had 39 points, I knew he took a lot of shots. When you're in it, it's not the Michael Jordan show like you might expect, because you got your own show to deal with. And I often say that as I get further away from those times, they become greater. And conveniently, as I get further away from those times, people forget my bad days as well, so you do become greater in people's memories and in your own, I don't really remember watching an amazing performance from Michael. I remember feeling all of us pulling on our individual oars and our skulls racing down the court effectively. That's a clumsy analogy, but that's what I remember.
The following season, the Bulls won 61 games and advanced to the finals, where once again they would face the Utah Jazz. The series marked the end of an era for Chicago and would be Luc's final year as a Bull.
Interestingly, what I remember was the sense that we weren't going to be together again. I think we had Ron Harper, I think, produced a T-shirt referencing The Last Dance, corny as it may sound, but we certainly brought that in to the matchup, to the whole season. And Utah was stronger again, and we had 3 years of going all the way into June, so we were getting tired. You get beaten up over playing multiple seasons back-to-back of deep into the playoffs. So we were carrying more injuries, and we were definitely more vulnerable.
Trailing by 1 in the closing seconds of Game 6, Jordan took matters into his own hands to secure the Bulls' 6th title.
The Chicago Bulls on the the strength of Michael Jordan, have their second three-peat and their 6th NBA title in 8 seasons.
As far as I'm concerned, this is the best of the lot. Most satisfying. You know, we had so many things stack against us this year between injuries and the whole situation with, you know, the team not coming back and so on and so forth. It was just, I thought it showed, it was incredible that we came through and had as good a season and as good a playoffs as we did. And I think we earned this one more than ever before.
It still amazes me how we win. We're not the biggest team. I think we win because we're smart, we're intelligent, we know the game of basketball, and we don't need someone to be the spotlight. We don't care as long as we win.
We had to really grind out those wins, is what I remember, which made it pretty cool in the end to win a 3rd championship and to feel as though maybe that was the one that could have got away from you. That was the one where we didn't feel like everything was stacked up in our favour.
This is a real struggle for us this year against overwhelming odds. Maybe not as talented as the last 2 years, but they had a great heart. Hearts of a champion, as Michael has said, and they won it.
I think it's bittersweet in the sense that it was the toughest route, the toughest challenge that we've had in the 6 championships that we've won.
You can win it, maybe get lucky, win it a second time. Once you win 3, there's not a lot of disputing that you're pretty good, you know, and I think we were pretty good.
I feel like we represent Chicago. You guys have made it a great place for us to represent. Feels like home. It's great to be on top.
When the Bulls walked off the floor, it was the last time Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Phil Jackson would be part of the team. Together, they built a legacy that included 6 championships and a unique philosophy on how to win.
Winning comes as a result of a mindset. It's really corny and it's become an old adage, but the first time I heard it was Phil saying, enjoy the process, engage in the process, and the winning will come as a result. You don't go to practice to win games, you go to practice and to get better and enjoy that process, and the winning is a byproduct of that. One thing I did learn from Phil, one thing I saw Phil do that helped deliver us a championship was finding a way to find the good in every player. And every player plays for a reason, every player's got a special talent. Phil was able to divine that, take the time to recognise it and not get caught up in the package that the talent was in, and then put it in a position to win. I really just think that he was great at recognising what the jigsaw piece was. Certainly with me, I was a funny looking piece. He managed to squeeze it in. So this is what it is right here. Yeah.
Hey buddy, how short are you?
5 foot 26. Huh? 5 foot 26.
Oh crap. Are you 7'1"? 7'6"? 7'2", guys. What do you play for?
No, I don't play anymore.
You don't
Look
play?
how old I am.
No, it's good for you to play until you get older. They can't even go like this. Nice seeing you, thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to work.
I can come here.
For a picture? What are you doing?
No! Come on!
Got back up some yellow toe.
Look, under the arm.
See, I ain't that short,
Where'd you guys go? That's all on these hoagies, right?
Yes, Philly cheesesteaks, baby. We bring them top.
What up, mate?
All right, Fred. And he used to play for Chicago Bulls.
Since retiring from the NBA in 2001, after 2 seasons with the Suns and 1 with the Knicks, Luke Longley now enjoys returning to the United States and getting back in touch with the league he left behind.
No, I'll tell you the truth, mate. When I finished playing basketball, I finished with an injury that stopped me from playing, and it was like an old girlfriend. I didn't want to see her anymore, you know. I stepped away from basketball for a decade and didn't really have a lot to do with it and didn't watch it. I love being in the NBA arenas again and smelling the popcorn and the mouldy ice rink underneath and all that. It's all pretty familiar. Yeah, it's been great. It's been fun. it seems a long time ago now, for sure. But going back to Chicago is a trip. Like, it really is. You walk down the street and the policeman on the beat says, "Hi, Luke," like he's your neighbour. Everyone knows and everyone remembers and everyone's proud and everyone. And the thing about that is everyone saw me on my bad days, and I had some chronically bad days. I had days where I couldn't catch, and yet Chicago fans have forgotten all those, and they remember all the good stuff. And yeah, you feel like feels great to have an American city be so warm to you, that's for sure. I haven't bought many beers in Chicago lately, that's for sure.
As the first Aussie to play in the NBA, and to play on the Chicago Bulls no less, Luke's impact in growing basketball back home in Australia has been significant.
Yeah, so the internet wasn't really, I don't know, when did the internet start? It was right, people weren't watching the games on the internet, it wasn't streaming content. So I had friends and family calling me on my home phone, there weren't even really cell phones then, saying we stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning to watch it, because you had to watch it live then or record it on your video cassette, basically. And then rushing down to the newspaper stand in the morning, getting the newspaper to find out what was going on. And so I remember feeling like basketball was penetrating into Australia partially on the back of me being involved. Also, I think, and some people may argue with me, but I think our team was exciting for people that were in basketball, but somehow people that hadn't been interested in basketball were attracted to the whole show of Michael and Dennis and Scotty, and there's the kooky Croatian, and there's the laid-back Australian, and there's Phil, the Zen master. Like, it was an interesting package, and I think Australia, at the time, a lot of Australians learned about basketball on the back of that, and obviously I was the grease on the cogs there.
In recent years, Luke has been involved with the Australian men's team, who, with a base of experienced NBA players like Andrew Bogut, Matthew Dellavedova, Patty Mills, Aaron Baines, and Joe Ingles, along with younger players Ben Simmons, Dante Exum, and Thon Maker, are looking to become a force.
We will see. I hope we see. I mean, I've come fourth 3 times personally at the Olympics, and I know the Boomers in Atlanta came fourth. I wasn't involved. That's a lot of fourths, so it's time for a medal, there's no question. And Thon and Ben, if they participate, and certainly they've said that they want to, if they're healthy, and there's all these complications now with free agency and insurance and all that, but if we get everyone to the table and we coach them well, yeah, they will be. But it won't be them leading us, it'll be Patty Mills and Dellavedova and Aaron Baines. Those are the guys that have been there a long time, they'll be leading. It's also been great to see all our Australian guys finding homes on all the clubs the guys are on. The coaches and management appreciate the way they go about it, how hard they play, how well they look after their body, their commitment to the team. So I'm proud to see that.
More than 20 years have passed since the first championship in Chicago, but the memories of those moments will always endure.
Well, it's changed my life, obviously. With it comes a certain amount of kudos and respect from people around the game, and that was something that was always hard to achieve, hard to get, hard earned, easily lost. For me, the 3 championships was obviously really important. Being the first Australian in the NBA was also something really special. So then being an Australian, having got to the NBA and then won 3 championships, I just felt like I was really fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. I mean, there's 1,000 ways to cut it where I don't end up in Chicago, I don't even get the NBA, or I get traded somewhere else. It was such a perfect storm of fortune for me that I guess that's a lot of times that's forefront in my mind when I think about those 3 championships. It's just like, how lucky am I? How lucky can one bloke get?
This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more on Luke Longley, log on to ESPN.com.